It's time to create the ceiling. I'll duplicate the floor, then press GZ3 on the numpad and press enter. Let's rename it right away. For now we will hide both of these objects. We have already positioned the camera. The next important step besides setting up the lighting is creating a realistic view outside the window. We don't want to place a random image of mountains or dewy fields outside. It needs to match the actual location. Let's take a look at what's really outside our window. In Pure Ref, we already have all of our reference images. Looking at the original apartment, we can see that there is another building very close to ours, but there are also some trees, which is great. So instead of modeling all of that, which would significantly slow down our workflow, we will use a much more simple solution. Of course, it's useful to know how to model trees on neighboring buildings, and we will definitely cover that in one of the later levels. Right now, I'd like to focus on the basics. Now, I'd like to show you something interesting. Before recording this lesson, I asked ChatGPT for help. I wanted to make sure it could handle this task, and it absolutely could. I took a screenshot of this window. As you can see, the photo wasn't taken perfectly straight on, but I needed an image that I could place perfectly parallel to this wall inside Blender. My prompt wasn't even particularly detailed, but ChatGPT understood exactly what I meant. By the way, you can find the prompt in the description of this video. I've already saved the image, and now I want to place it roughly 1 meter outside the window, perfectly parallel to the wall. Then I'll add an image as plane. Of course, it appears at the world origin, so I'll move it into place where we need it, scale it, and position it along the y-axis. Now, let's open the shader editor. You can see that the image texture has been assigned automatically. In older versions of Blender, that wasn't possible. You had to install the import images as planes add-on, add image texture, and so on. Now it's built directly into Blender, which is great. I'll delete the principal BSDF node. Then I'll add an emission node by pressing Shift-A and selecting emission, color output to the emission node, and let's set the strength to 3. You can immediately see the difference with the strength set to 0. The image looks dark, at 1 it starts emitting light, but I guess we need to use the level of 3. Since an emission shader acts as an additional light source, let's also add our sunlight. Go to the world settings. Under surface, click the small yellow dot next to color and choose sky texture. Then switch to cycles. Here what we have so far. We are slowly getting closer to the final render. We have added this skylighting. There we go. That already makes the room feel much more complete, much more realistic. By the way, why did we add an emission shader to the background image? When sunlight enters a room, the sky itself contributes light. Sunlight is scattered through the atmosphere and clouds, but the sky isn't the only indirect light source. Everything that sunlight hits also reflects light. The neighboring building reflects sunlight back into our room. especially because it's a light colored building. If it were black, it would absorb much more light instead of reflecting it. Since it's fairly bright, it acts as a secondary light source. That's why giving our background image a small amount of emission makes the lighting much more realistic. I'll return to the camera view. The image is highlighted in orange because it's currently selected. Now let's look at the shader editor for a moment. This is where we will edit all of our materials. If we switch from object to world, we can edit the environmental lighting. Remember we added the sky texture. The two settings you will use most often are sun elevation and sun rotation. Make sure you are previewing everything in cycles. Now you can adjust the sun position. A sun elevation of about 15 degrees represents early morning or late afternoon when the sun is fairly low in the sky. Sun rotation changes the direction of the sunlight. That depends on both the time of day and the season. Now I'd like to show you a more advanced lighting technique that's commonly used by professionals. I actually learned one from an architectural visualization Discord community. Huge thanks to them. I will leave a link below this video. It's probably the largest architectural visualization Discord server in the world, and it's full of incredibly useful information. One trick I learned there is using the two sky nodes, or effectively two lighting setups, two sunlight setups. For example, if you combine two sky texture nodes with a mixed shader node, you can create much softer shadows, because in real life shadows usually not perfectly sharp. To achieve that effect, simply give the two sky texture nodes slightly different settings. For example, 15 and 17 for the sun elevation, and then 16 and 12 or 16 and 20, for example, to the sun rotation. Let's wrap up this lesson here, and I'll see you in the next one.